Hey everybody, welcome back to My Wings of Refuge. I'm so excited today, y'all. We are in March and the weather has been beautiful, and what says gardening better than that? I know it's a little early, only if you're talking about planting in the ground. It is not too early to start some of your seeds, and that's what we're going to do today. One of my absolute favorite gardening things to plant is tomatoes, and today we are going to get started planting those tomato seeds indoors, and I want to show you how I do mine. There's a lot of rules out there, different rules of thought, so to speak, and this is how I do mine, and this is going to be why I do it this way. Let's get started. This is actually a peat moss mixed with worm castings and a tiny bit of organic feed. You can use lots of different things for feed, but we use about a tablespoon of blood meal, and I've used just a tiny bit also of some organic tomato food that's really made out of your composted chicken litter, chicken matter. So yeah, this is what we use. So the formula that I use is about 3-to-1 here. So I use about 3 portions of our peat moss and then 1 portion of our worm castings, and then the peat moss is going to be incredibly dry, and so then I just take the water hose and just sprinkle it and water it down pretty good. I want this to be moist. I don't want it to be sopping wet, as you can see here. I don't want it sopping wet, but I also don't want it to be too dry because it'll be a little more difficult to get your seeds going. I start with 3 parts of peat moss. Then I add 1 part of worm castings. And even though the worm castings is over a year old, look at those worms. I love it. Then just add some water, not too much, not too little. You want the perfect mix. Okay, so it is important to figure out what seeds are you going to plant. You want to make sure it's something that'll grow in your area. Now I'm in 7A, zone 7A, and I like to do a lot of canning with my tomatoes, but I also like tomatoes that I can slice and eat. I am not as crazy about the tiny sweet ones that you can do in salads. I like those, but those are not my favorites. And so I'm actually going to fill this tray of 72 here, and these are some of my absolute favorites. Actually, I have never tried this one. This one is brand new to me this year, but I've heard rave reviews, and so it's the Castelluto Genovese, and Bossy approves. And so that is one, it's going to be really big and meaty, and so usually those are good for slicing and also good for canning. And so black creme is also a favorite. I love black cremes equally as much as I love the Cherokee purples, and so I'm going to be using both of those for both slicing and canning. I will say I did an entire batch of my salsa last year with all Cherokee purples, and they were fantastic in my salsa. Okay, we're going to do the tomatillos, the purple Coban. So this is a new one for me. I've done the tomatillas before, but not the purples, and so I'm going to try that this year. Last year I made a fabulous roasted tomatilla sauce. It was amazing, and my goal is to be able to have enough that I can actually make and can some of that salsa as well. Last year I made enough, a large bowl, and we ate it all within like a couple of days. Okay, so, and then another favorite is the True Black brandy wines. And then my ever so favorite strictly for canning are the San Marzanos. And so all of these I can can with, but I can also eat the majority of them fresh and I can do so many different things with them. So pick your favorites when you're doing this, but make sure that they are grown in your zone. That is incredibly important. So I have 6 varieties here, and since I have 6 rows of 12, I am going to plant a row of each one of these. But don't forget, one of the first things you want to do is go ahead and get those name tags ready, because you don't want to get them mixed up, okay? Time for a light watering. Oops, there we go. Before taking these in and putting them under a grow light and on a heat pad, I am going to, you might see here that I have this tray inside of a solid tray with no holes, because that is how I will be watering these. So I'm going to put about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. It'll be more level too when we get inside. Oops. You don't want too much water, but the good thing about that is that water is going to feed up through. This will soak up and draw up that moisture. And so now we're ready to put these under the grow light. Okay, so I use these small cells. I like to start these in small cells, and so I'm going to start them here until they get established and get large enough. It'll be a few weeks, and so once these are finished, I will actually pull these out, and they will have a nice root about them, and I'm going to then repot them into these cups. Now, yes, that is double duty, but I have a reason for that. In here, they're going to have a lot of roots, but they're going to be small. But then I'm going to plant them actually deep here, as they'll be tall enough, they'll stick out, and I will add dirt to the top of them. Reason being is, one thing about tomatoes is you want a lot of roots. Some people wait until they put them in the ground, and they'll put them in the ground sideways. You may have seen that before. When they put them in the ground sideways, to me, it just makes more sense, because that takes a lot of energy for them to then grow and come back up. That's just my thought process. And so I like to actually somewhat do that in these cups. And so what I do is I just drill a couple of holes. Depending on your size drill, how many holes you drill. This is pretty tiny, and so I drilled about 4 holes in here, because what I will do is once these get established, and I will try to come back and do another video on this, and but just to make sure you know, as they get established and I can repot these, I won't fill this with dirt and then put them on the top. The goal is to put them as low as possible and then fill so that the dirt comes up that stem and stalk, because it's similar to that whole process of putting them in the ground. And when you lay those down sideways, the purpose in that is that stem that is going in the ground is producing more roots. And so that's what we're going to do here. So I will plant that in here once these are established, and then we will top it off with dirt up that stem so that it can produce more roots. So at that point, it's going to take up also a little bit more space under the light, the grow light that we have set up. And so I don't want to start this yet. I want to start them in here, and I will just transplant them later when they're ready. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? Yes. Okay, so how do you do your tomatoes? I have been doing this. This works great for me. I have had an abundance of tomatoes. You might remember even last year I did a video. I showed you my tomatoes and the fact that we went all year long, or all season long, and I probably pulled literally a handful of weeds. Remember, we do the back to Eden style gardening, so I use lots of, when I get them out in the garden, I'm going to be fertilizing them with rabbit and sheep manure, and so that is pretty much all we need. If you do not have access to rabbit or sheep manure, you can use things like the blood meal, just warning, because some animals, if they can get to it, they will want to do that. If you have a dog, sometimes they'll like to get in it and they roll in it. Other animals, it might kind of draw them in. Mine is fenced because I have chickens running around, and so I don't have to worry about that. Alfalfa meal. You can use bone meal. There's lots of other things you can buy. Just the organic tomato, if you want to. You can use, if you've saved your wood ash. Last year we used some pot ash, as they call it, from the wood stove. You can use that as well. And so there's lots of different things you can use, but this is how I do mine, okay? And so I hope you're planning to plant lots of tomatoes this year, because tomatoes to me just say summer, and it wouldn't be summer without homegrown juicy tomatoes that have never been refrigerated. I don't like refrigerated tomatoes. But y'all, have a great week, and don't forget, start those seeds, especially if you're in zone A. You still got some time, so plant those seeds indoors. Right now is a good time. Y'all have a great week, and I'll see you again soon.